Hello, everyone. If you are just entering the call right now, we will be setting up over the next couple of minutes. I'm going to put this on Facebook Live as well as post this on Twitter so we can have more people join us on those platforms. So hang tight, and we will be starting the webinar shortly. Once again, if you are just joining the call with us right now, I am setting us up on Facebook Live as well as posting on Twitter to have more people join us on those platforms. So stay tuned, and we will be starting over the next couple minutes. Once again, give us a couple minutes. We are just setting everything up on Facebook Live and Twitter. So stay tuned, and we will be starting shortly. All right, thank you everyone for joining us. We will now be starting our webinar, and today we'll be welcoming Jon Bridge. Jon is the Chief Programming Officer for Alpha Epsilon Pi International and is an alumnus of Virginia Commonwealth University. And if you haven't met me before, my name is Joel Bond, and I'm the Associate Director of Alums for Campus Fairness. And now I'll give it to Jon, and he'll take it away from here. Jon?
Great. Thank you, Joel. Thank you very much. As Joel said, my name is Jon Bridge. I'm the Chief Programming Officer for Alpha Epsilon Pi, the International Jewish Fraternity. And a lot of times when we get asked to speak for the Israel world and the Jewish world, they always wonder why a fraternity. And so I always like to start by explaining first, why a fraternity would do something like this. One, we're a Jewish fraternity, so it's natural. But what a fraternity is really it's a learning laboratory for undergraduate men to learn how to live, work, organize, and do a lot of things together so they can better be ready for life post-college. And in the fraternity world, we focus a lot on leadership and academics and scholarship and things like that. And what makes AEPi different is the fact that we have the Jewish and Israel side to our organization. And so we always love to be a part of the Israel world. Our brothers on campus are extremely active. They're fellows for other organizations. They're the ones showing up to meetings. They're loud and proud. And that's really a big role that AEPi plays is as an on-campus organization. We have structures on campus. Our guys live and breathe the fraternity and Jewish life on campus. And that's kind of how we focus our energy to help the pro-Israel world mainly.
Thank you, Jon, for that. And before we get started into some questions, I want to remind people that just like in our past webinars, you can enter any questions that you may have into our Q&A section, and we'll answer them promptly. As well as if you're with us on Facebook Live, you can enter any questions you may have into the Facebook Live comment section, and we will be able to answer those as well. So I'm going to start it off with one question. How does AEPi instill pride and a commitment to Israel among Jewish college students?
Definitely. So we actually do this a few different ways. One is with anything AEPi does, we like to kind of formulate it in the structure of the fraternity setting. So one example where we instill pride in Israel amongst our Jewish students on campus is actually a chair position within the chapter. So the fraternity system has our executive board with president and vice president and recruitment, but we also have a minor board, which are really the programming chairs. They're the ones that do the day-to-day programming for the chapter. And one of those chair positions is actually an Israel engagement chairman. So right off the bat, when someone joins AEPi and sees the chair positions that are offered, he sees the Israel engagement chairman position. And what that person does, one, he serves as a liaison to the many campus organizations that are out there supporting Israel. Another thing he does is he informs the chapter of current events happening in Israel, things like that. And he also helps them get to Israel. There's so many wonderful organizations out there that help get undergrads to Israel. And he's really the guy in the chapter that does that. So first and foremost, it's in the fraternal structure we have, and therefore there's inherent pride in that position and in Israel in general. Another thing we do is we utilize, as other fraternities, we have international beneficiaries for philanthropy. And what's great is each year undergrads get to vote on new beneficiaries, and the three we currently have are the Israel Cancer Research Foundation, the Jaffa Institute, and United Hatzalah, all Israel-based, but work, of course, worldwide to help in various ways. But when you look at what AEPi brothers are raising money for, there's another way we instill pride in Israel. And then really lastly is the fact that we do have chapters in Israel. We're on most of the campuses in Israel. We have chapters that are pre-army Israelis, like in the Technion, and then we have IDC, where there could be Americans that are 18 in the same pledge classes, new member classes as former IDF vets. We have chapters that'll do chapter meetings completely in Hebrew, and all of that really embodies AEPi in Israel, and that connection to say we have chapters in Israel is just another inherent way that AEPi brothers are supporting Israel and have that pride because we are in Israel as a fraternity. So when you have pride in the fraternity, that's another aspect right there. So really on many different aspects of the fraternity is where we instill this pride in our members.
Another question that I'm prompted to ask from your explanation of getting undergraduate brothers involved with leadership under the label, I guess, of organizing Israel engagement activities. How has the introduction of the Israel engagement chair specifically helped AEPi brothers combat anti-Zionism on campus? And can you provide us any specific examples on what campuses have been very impactful utilizing their Israel engagement chair?
Yeah, definitely. So again, the fact that it is a leadership position in the chapter means it has natural responsibilities to program and organize and do things like that. A few different places where there was a drastic AEPi difference made, whether it was the brother who is the Israel engagement chairman or a chapter getting together behind certain things. So one of them, Arizona State, had a pretty rough year in regards to Israel on campus. First, the chapter would show up huge to student government meetings and just fill the room with pro-Israel voices, which an inherent presence ensues a certain comfort level. When you're not standing up there alone fighting for Israel, you're more comfortable to do so. And so the fact that we could fill the seats with brothers is great. And we also had brothers speak up many different times throughout the hearings and things like that. Individual brothers from the chapters did that. Another one was University of Nevada, Reno. There's been swastikas on that campus several times over the last couple of years. And we actually had 5 brothers attend a meeting with school administration there to see what can be done and things like that. And then another one, and this one is like, so there's also things that happen amongst fraternities. We've had a few different instances this year where in even fraternal intramural competitions, there's been anti-Semitic slurs towards our chapters in a basketball game or a flag football game. And, you know, the Israel engagement chairman is usually that voice, and along with the Jewish identity chair as well, that really steps up and empowers the chapter to make a response and not take things lightly. But there's, you know, countless examples. And most recently at George Mason, there was someone accepted to the university who had ties to white supremacist groups and things like that. And our brothers really led the fight there, or helped lead the fight there, to help make George Mason a safer campus by not allowing the student to attend. And they wrote a whole petition and got it signed and presented it to the school, and actually were successful in getting this individual's acceptance rescinded. So we're really just trying to make it a safe place for as many people as possible. And, you know, and then there's little things like in SUNY Albany this year, F Israel was written in the snow, and you know, our brothers helped organize and execute 2 walks to raise awareness and things like that. But that is something that people find as leaders in AEPi when they have that backing of the brotherhood and they have the resources at their disposal, the support from headquarters staff, the support from all of our partner organizations that work on campus. They get empowered to do some incredible things. And, you know, that's really just this year alone. And then countless times and other instances where AEPis have stepped up. And, you know, this is my 7th year. I've heard stories where there's been swastikas painted on a Hillel building, and the AEPi brothers would wake up and go paint over it before anyone could see it. You know, another thing, we helped co-sponsor events to commemorate the 1-year Tree of Life, or, you know, massacre, the Tree of Life, and we helped with that 2 different events. The power in numbers is really our strength, and we utilize that to the best of our abilities, whether that is just showing up or being the people leading the fight. We do both.
I agree. And forewarning for everyone on this call that it's not an AEPi. Myself, as well as ACS Executive Director, our AEPi brothers, AEPi alumni. Our ACF Executive Director is an alumnus of SUNY Binghamton, and I am an alumnus of San Diego State University. And we feel and we always tell people that our AEPi experience is a big reason why we decided to get involved with Israel advocacy and really making campuses a safe space and safe for Jewish students, pro-Israel students, to express themselves and to discuss Zionism, what it means to them. Before we move on to some of the other questions I've talked with you about, I would actually have another question coming up off the top of my head from what you were discussing. Mm-hmm. What's partnership been like, or has it manifested itself, or is there plans for it to manifest itself between your chapters in Israel and your chapters in the States?
Yeah, so as far as working together on things, it's a lot of networking. One of the huge benefits of being in a fraternity is the network that you get to be a part of. So whether that's brothers studying abroad in Israel, brothers making Aliyah, there's an inherent built-in network when you get there that you don't have if you're not an AEPi. And it's really anywhere in the country. So that's one way. Another way is each year at our international convention, we bring people from every chapter across the world, from Australia to New York, California, and England, and of course Israel. And when you get all of these minds together, and especially with our Israeli brothers, who again, some of them are 18-year-old freshmen and some are former IDF commanders, you really get a nice sharing of ideas, and you can show that the fraternal system does work when put in place. And as far as the education side of things, it's not really a pinpoint of it's more of a natural inherent. We don't specifically say, hey, learn about things from one another in regards to Israel. We kind of let that happen naturally through the brotherhood, through that connection that they feel more open to share these things. And it's nice when someone's like, I know someone who's in the IDF, he's a brother of mine, and things you're saying are just not true, because they've seen it and heard it firsthand. But the beauty of it is it's very natural. It's not something that needs to be so pinpoint and so like specific and purposeful. It happens, and it's beautiful when it does.
I agree, and I think maintaining that connection and networking between the chapters in Israel and the chapters in the States is very important for not only cohesion but it helps these chapters to learn from each other, and for the chapters in the States to be able to have firsthand accounts of the reality of everything that's happening in Israel on the ground.
Exactly. It's right there. We're living it.
As online and campus anti-Semitism are on the rise, what are some ways Jewish students who aren't involved with AEPi can work to combat hate?
Yeah, so it's interesting. I do a lot of speaking on this topic, a lot to high schoolers as well who are preparing to come to college. I'm also a youth group at BBYO advisor myself, so I help my teens that I work with as well walk through this. What I always like to say first is anti-Semitism isn't new. It's been around for thousands of years, and it's probably not going anywhere soon. But the fact remains is the Jewish people are still here. Israel exists. It's not going anywhere. So I always like to start by saying that. But what I always tell people is whatever you want to do, and this obviously comes from the social aspect of being in a fraternity, whatever you want to do on campus, do it, but do it as a proud Jew, do it as a Zionist, do it as someone who supports Israel, because when you bring it up naturally in conversations to your friends, it's a lot different. I can think of times when I was on campus where my friends who were not Jewish would stand up and hear something and be an ally only because we were friends. And it wasn't necessarily people I met in the fraternity. It was in my dorm. It was through my major. It was through other clubs I've joined. It was through work. I always say you want to be on the baseball team, be on the baseball team, but do it as a proud Zionist. You want to be on the chess team, be on the chess team. You want to be in the pancake club, whatever you want to do, go do it. There's so many opportunities on campus for so many amazing social experiences. Go do it, but do it as that Jew. I will never forget on my dorm room floor, I'm sitting, so maybe you can't see, but I'm a big guy. And they would call me the abominable Jew man because that was just my personality. And I embraced it. And, everyone knew me. I had roommates that's like, oh, I'd never met a Jew before. And yeah, that's just who I became as the loud, fun, social person. And then it really broadened the campus to where we're even AEPi, something we do is we lead a Holocaust remembrance event called We Walk to Remember. Since 2010, I believe we've been doing it, to the point where I had other fraternities reaching out to me saying, we want to participate in this. We know you, we know this is something that's important. How do we help? And when you can have your friends reaching out to you, asking how you can help, that's really the ultimate goal here. We don't need to say, oh, BDS, now it's time to help. All year long, just make friends, have fun, and be proud of who you are. Don't hide that. And the more proud you are, the more people respect you, the more, and we tell this to our chapters too, the more they embrace their pride in their Judaism and in Israel, the more successful they really become in other aspects of what it is to be a fraternity. Because if you're scared to be yourself, other people won't respect that. But if you're proud of who you are, people will respect that and like it. And then you when they see something in the news, they hear something in a class, they'll ask you, is this true? I heard that. Little things you've heard, Jews are baby killers, Zionists are baby. I've never once killed a baby in my life, and everyone I know knows that. I love babies. They're adorable. I would never do that. And so when they say, like, my friend John, he's a Zionist, he's Jewish, what you're saying doesn't describe him at all, then all of the adversaries of Israel are falling on deaf ears. And that's really something that just go have fun. Just do it. Whatever you want to do, do it. Just be proud of who you are while you're doing it.
I agree. Um, Before I get into some more questions, one question that's being prompted in my mind is how has AEPi's, I guess, over time, it's increased focus on Israel programming. How has that affected its relationships on campus, both in the IFC, then a fraternity council, or whatever relevant councils respective AEPIs may be under, and as well as with other organizations on campus?
Yeah, definitely. So what you'll find is when you're a part of a smaller, campuses are big, whether it's 1,000 people on a campus or 55,000 people, campuses are big. And when you find your niche group, and your niche group in a fraternity is a part of a larger yet still niche group, you have shared experiences, you have shared events, you build certain relationships, and then you kind of show up for one another. Like I said before, when I was in college, we had other fraternities reaching out, asking me about how do we get involved in We Walk to Remember. And when you're proud to do it, people respond in a positive way. So how has it affected our relationships? To be honest, it hasn't, and that's exactly what we want. We don't want to. We have those relationships with our IFC counterparts. We go through recruitment with them. We're all raising philanthropy dollars and participating in each other's events, and we're showing up for community service events. And when one member of our community, whether it's within our fraternity or in the Greek system, is hurting for some reason, the entire Greek community will rally around that. So if that is a sickness or something that happened in another fraternity, the fraternity and sorority system rallies around it. In AEPi, we've had countless examples where we've had anti-Semitism towards us, where the greater Greek system really shows up big. And there's been times where we've had swastikas on our houses, and other fraternities and sororities say, Delta Chi stands against anti-Semitism with AEPi, or, sorority Zeta Tau Alpha stands with it. And it's incredible to see, as we are a part of a larger community within ourselves, the response we get. And as we increase our involvement in the pro-Israel world, you look at the effect we're having within IFCs, within student governments. When our friends are there, it's just natural. And so that's really how it hasn't affected it, which is good, because if it had affected it, it might have gone in the other way. But luckily, it's just Israel and Judaism is one aspect of AEPi. It's really our niche, what separates us from anyone else. But we're still a fraternity. We're doing intramural sports. We're doing philanthropy events. We're getting higher GPAs than the rest of campus. Those are things that fraternity men do, and we are in part of those shared experiences. And then when we show the fact that we need their help with something, most of the time people really do show up, and it's inspiring to watch, and it proves my point before. Just go be who you are, be proud of it, and people help.
I agree. I think the relationships that AEPi builds on campus are the keys to its success. Whatever it's going through, whether it might be anti-Semitic hate that's explicitly anti-Semitic, or sometimes it's a hate that is explicitly anti-Zionist, and sometimes it falls in the middle. And throughout it all, AEPi's relationships are what keeps it afloat and what's able to help it weather the storm.
And specifically, what's interesting about that is it's crazy how much you'll see when it goes quickly from anti-Zionist to anti-Jewish right away. If the BDS movement was strictly anti-Zionist, then during times of high tension, there wouldn't be swastikas popping up on an AEPi house, right? That just is a direct correlation that you see in sensitive times, whether things are happening in Israel, whether there's a BDS thing happening on campus, whether it's just, you know, apartheid week on campus, whatever it is. If it was strictly anti-Israel, you wouldn't see these anti-Semitic symbols popping up on our houses and in our areas and in our neighborhoods, or, you know, in dorms that are predominantly, it just doesn't, you know, it doesn't add up that way.
It's true. We see it far too often where anti-Semitism seeps into anti-Zionist rhetoric. And I think that's a situation that our students and our AEPi brothers are going to have to deal with increasingly. And
Definitely.
one thing that you're starting to see is during COVID-19, a lot of that stuff is moving online.
Mm-hmm.
The question is both how is AEPi changing how it's doing programming in general and how it's operating,
Mm-hmm.
the reality of COVID-19, and also how is AEPi changing its strategy in relation to Israel and anti-Semitism in light of
Right.
COVID-19.
So both answers are pretty much the same, just like everyone else. We're doing online programming like this. Through our AEPi Connect website, we have seminars on a variety of different things, from alumni that are experts in certain fields to, you know, fun things like we had an alumni who's a chef teach people how to cook. We have more business oriented programming like how to get out of debt or how to buy your first house. And then the resources we're providing the chapter in regards to Israel and in regards to, you know, Judaism and being proud in the same, again, are going online, and those are definitely more individually based with the chapters. Because our chapters are so different on every campus, their ability to program, their, you know, desire for specific things in different areas, what's happened on their campus, it's all very different. And we, like the rest of the world, are just going about our business to the best of our abilities, reacting, trying to plan ahead for the unknown. Um, but the strategies are the same, you know. It's just moved online, and you're going to hold a chapter meeting once a week, now that's online. You want to hold a brotherhood event, now that's online. You want to hold educational sessions, I'm actually scheduling one now. Something I teach is how to have difficult conversations with difficult people, and the Israeli chapter specifically reached out to do that. So it's the same as everyone else as far as our strategy to go online, but we're very much chapter focused and making sure that our undergraduate brothers have all the resources they need, are given as much information as humanly possible. I mean, we're trying to stay ahead of many curves, both in the fraternity world, in the Jewish pro-Israel world, on the campus world. As an international organization, you know, every state is different, every municipality is different with what we're allowed to do. Every campus is different. And so we're just trying to stay on top of it and guide our undergraduate brothers to the best of our abilities, and coach them up to be as successful as possible. And we're seeing successes, which is really, really great. And we're really loving all the great work our guys are doing.
And you brought up a good point at the end there, and you brought up the point about how you're I guess revolutionizing your strategies in both addressing anti-Semitism on campus, but also how the changing fraternal world is affecting AEPis across the country. So you're being hit by some campuses, you could call it anti-fraternity, you know, ideas, and then you're also being hit with anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism. And I saw it firsthand at your national convention this past summer. But I would love for you to talk about maybe some of the ways you're preparing your AEPi leadership representatives at each chapter, now you're preparing your national team to really combat both simultaneously.
Yeah, it's fun when you're hated by a lot of people for completely different reasons. Um, and by the way, come talk to us. If we promise we're not bad. But it's really first being a partner, both in the fraternity world. We are partnering with other fraternities, keeping each other, and sororities, keeping each other up to date on, you know, what are we doing with conventions, right? We're moving our convention online. How are other people doing their conventions online? Things like that. And with the Israel world and the Jewish world in general, it's just, again, being a partner. what programs are being run by all these other organizations that we can help get AEPi brothers to. We see ourselves as a vehicle. So there's the alphabet soup of on-campus pro-Israel organizations. They all do amazing things, and they all do it in their own way. And depending on the organization and the campus and the chapter, we now have a menu of options to be able to offer our chapter brothers, across the country, depending on what it is. So, and some of it's going to be online, some of it's cohort based, some of it, it's still online, but it's more cohort based, not so educational on the sessions. And the beauty is that as a community, the pro-Israel world is more cohesive than ever. I've been, each year it gets more and more cohesive. I've been doing this for 7+ years now. And from where I've started to where I am now, and I know you've had Jacob Boehm on here before, and a lot of credit definitely goes to the ICC on this. We are cohesive. We have shared ideas and methodology, and while each organization has their own thing, we're working really well together. And AEPi sees our role in that as providing all of the organizations an opportunity and access to the brothers who are really interested and really want to get in the trenches. And whether it's more education through Stand With Us, whether it's being a part of the Israel Club, whether it's, cohort-based leadership with JFNA and things like that. There's so many things out there that the organizations are doing, and we don't want to compete necessarily by creating our own. That's not really our niche in the pro-Israel world. Our niche is about the inspiration of the brothers and the bodies and empowering the community. And so the more brothers we can get involved in these programs, the more AEPi is happy as a whole.
Now we got a crowd question from the Andy Borans coming from Facebook Live. And he asks, to both of us and Avi, but he is not on, so I'll answer for him. How has Israel advocacy on campus changed since you were both undergraduate students at your universities? And you can go, and then I can go after you.
Yeah, it was when I was on campus. Let's see, I was initiated in AEPi in 2008, so 12 years ago is when I started. It wasn't so in your face as it is now with the anti-Israel. It was, there'd be something happening in Israel, an operation or something like that, and you would see something on campus, but it wasn't so organized. It wasn't so specific. You wouldn't hear the same chants at VCU as you would in California. And as far as the pro-Israel side of it, there's just so many more options now for Jewish and Zionist, not just Jewish, but Zionist students, people who want to support Israel, whether they're Jewish or not. There's just so many incredible opportunities that just either they weren't around or I wasn't informed because I was on a smaller populated campus in regards to Jewish life and Israel life. But it's inspirational to see. And on top of that, the type of freshman that comes to campus now is very different than when I was a freshman. Like a lot of the freshmen now have already started their own companies or volunteered for nonprofits and things like that. There's just a much different generation of freshmen. And so I think the motivation that they bring when we can harness that into the pro-Israel movement has shown dividends on what the culture on campus is like in regards to being a pro-Israel student. So as it's gotten more aggressive on the anti-Israel side, the pro-Israel side and the pro-Jewish side has, in my opinion, skyrocketed over the last 5-10 years. It's been incredible to watch and to be a part of, both as an undergrad and on staff and in the community. That's definitely, I'd say, a big change that I've seen.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the change has taken place in the last 5 or 10 years. I went to San Diego State from 2010 to 2015, and that was really when you started to see Israel advocacy and the related organizations, really start to beef up their programming. You start to see AEPi have staff members at AEPi headquarters and even in local AEPi chapters, depending on where you're at, that started having Israel education or advocacy chairs. You start to see things like the Emerson Fellowship through Stand With Us and the ICC Grinspan Fellowship and many other fellowships start to really beef up their offerings, how many fellows they have around the country. And that's when you start to see universities both test the idea of BDS resolutions on large scale universities across the country, and you started seeing them to more more grassroots activities like referendums. You start to see the beginnings of what has now become deadly exchange. Now you're even starting to see a revival of something that started back then and really kind of died off for a while, which is trying to ban Sabra hummus on campus.
Right.
And that was basically what was happening on campus, but the pro-Israel and the anti-Israel side of the coin have both revolutionized what they're doing. Now, before, I guess, the playing field was much more uneven. There was a lot more, I guess, planning, resources dedicated to and grassroots infrastructure on our opponent's side. And now the pro-Israel world has really done a great job of beefing up what they're offering, especially in terms of progressive spaces. Now you see a lot more progressive organizations, maybe not necessarily campus specific, but a lot of them that are general, like Zionists. These are organizations that now can speak to the same exact questions that progressive Jews and progressive non-Jews who want to be Zionists are asking about: how can I be progressive and how can I be a Zionist? And that's really the question that is hitting our students now. It was a problem before and it was a question before, but now it's more defining. Millennials didn't have that question like Gen Z does. Before, it was an added attribute. Now it's expected that you're progressive. So now the question is, how do you make them compatible? And while each of us on this call knows that Zionism and progressivism are entirely compatible, I think to come to that conclusion, it does take education, because the way it's been, I guess, taught over the last couple of generations, and especially when we were in college, it was taught more in terms of, I guess, a moderate take on Israel, and therefore the fringes didn't really have a place. But I think progressivism is becoming a more mainstream ideology on campus, and it's more important now than ever that we make sure that we draw a comparison and that we make them entirely compatible. And that's kind of how it's changed, I think, since we've been on campus.
Definitely. And then one other thing that I thought of while you're saying this is we're much less reactionary. We were kind of caught off guard at first because, like, well, it was just inherent that Israel was good to us. And then once that started changing, and or it never changed for us, but once that started getting challenged, as a community, we weren't so prepared. But over the years, we have not been as reactionary. We've been proactive. It's not even proactive to build relationships. It's just we're doing things. We're not saying here's why Israel isn't bad anymore. And that change was incredibly important, because we're already losing if we start by here's why it's not bad. And I hated the reactionary methodology, and so did a lot of other people in the pro-Israel world, which is why it's been changed, and now we're out there being who we are and having fun doing it most of the time on campus.
You really hit it on the head. We went from being "this is why you shouldn't hate us" to "this is why you should love us."
Exactly.
And that was the game changer. Looks like we got a question in Q&A in Zoom. Can anything be done in high schools like in Newtown, Massachusetts, where the anti-Israel and anti-Semitism in their curriculums is still rampant? So by the time these students come to campuses, they have already been brainwashed. And I think you also can speak to it with your expertise, and you can dive into this more as the person who kind of headed formerly the high school department. So
yeah, definitely. So prior to me being chief programming officer, I really started and spearheaded AEPi's high school engagement program. And I'll tell you, it's the anti-Semitism in high school, whether it's through the education system, whether it's, I was at an event in Long Island one time, and they were showing me pictures of a swastika beer pong game in a high school program. Or I was at a high school event in Texas when they were talking about anti-Semitism, and someone said they were scared to go to college. And this was 5 years ago, maybe 4 years ago. Is there something we can do? Yes. First, having the conversations at home and getting involved in high school organizations that do support, the Jewish students' development as leaders, both as Zionists and individuals. I'm biased as a volunteer for BBYO. I love seeing what we do locally with our chapters, and I've been to a lot of international conventions. That's where my background as a youth group advisor is. But also, I know Stand With Us has an incredible high school department that will take individuals and then put them into school systems to run programs for students to do that. And then there's organizations out there like the Simon Wiesenthal Center who will go into the school system and actually uh, do education for teachers and for administrators. And ADL does a lot of that as well, and work with local officials on explaining little things like why is Holocaust education important. When you start talking about that, the conversation is a little different. That's really the big thing, is it has to come from the home though at first. If you see something wrong, contact someone who has connections to legal, to educational, to inspirational for the individuals, and also don't let them get bogged down. Like I say, anti-Semitism isn't new, and it's not going anywhere. People are probably always going to hate us just for the fact that we exist, and it's up to us to change those minds of the ones we can, and really influence the ones that have no opinion, to show that we're normal people just like anyone else. And as Zionists and as Jews, it's a shame that while you're going through the same school system and doing the same tests and homework, you also have to deal with the fact that people are hating you just for your existence, as a people and as a religion. It's really unfair. It's hard. And I've heard horror stories of high schoolers. One in Missouri where he was on the football team, and he basically, bad things happened, and they were bullying and harassing him for being Jewish. Not even just Israel. It's just the lines just are blurred by the people who don't know the nuances, and that's the scary part for us, really. But yeah, in the high school world, it starts at the home and gets to the organizations that can really help make a difference. And if you, whoever asked that question, want more information on any of those organizations, please reach out to me. As the beauty of AEPi is we partner with so many organizations in so many different ways, and we want to make sure that they are known. Like the Simon Wiesenthal Center has an app where high school students who are experiencing anti-Semitism can anonymously report it. And there's actually one for college students as well that AEPi helped fund through philanthropy dollars. That you can report it anonymously. You can have recordings, pictures, and someone who you don't even know will reach out to the school to handle it. Things like that exist, and unfortunately, as a community, we're not great at letting the people who aren't as involved know. But that's also why I love Alums for Campus Fairness, as you are engaging the parents and the alumni and the generations that are not currently in high school and college, because that's a huge connector as well, and utilizing them.
And I think you pointed to an important piece of the combating anti-Semitism on campus issue, and that is the effect that outside organizations can have on the issue on campus. How do you think outside organizations can be more effective in supporting Jewish and Zionist students? And not only how can they be more effective, but what organizations have you seen that are really doing excellent work on campus?
Oh man, there's so many that are doing excellent work. Stand With Us, Hasbara, JNF, um, uh, Camera. I mean, there's countless organizations out there that are doing incredible work on campus alongside Hillels and Chabads and AEPis that have those on-campus presences. What I'll say on ways we can improve as an organization is, and we've been, by the way, this is in no way like we have improved so much as a community in a lot of this, but like always, there's always room to grow. Is we need to first check our organizational egos at the door, and have the ability to understand that we might not have the exact right answer, but as a combination of thought, uh, and think tank style programs and things like that, we as a community can come up with the best answer. So it's not just one organization, right? So Stand With Us is big on education. That's incredible. Camera focuses a lot of their fellows do op-eds, and they focus more on that side. APAC a lot with student government, right? We all have our own niches, but as a community, we should be able to support our students. And then the other thing big is we need to be there for our students outside of Israel. This is something I'm extremely passionate about, and as we train AEPi staff, we're very purposeful. When I call someone for a reason, that reason is not said for 10, 15 minutes. I want to know what's going on. You know, how's school going? How's your family going? How's your boyfriend, girlfriend going? How's, you know, I know you're on the club soccer team. You know, how, like, we really need to be there for our students as mentors, not just in Israel. Because this is just one aspect of what they're dealing with. They have so many other things going on. I was in the library one time with an undergrad as he was trying to sign up for classes, and he couldn't even get the classes he needed to graduate. These are things going on in our students' lives every single day that as professionals, we do not have on the forefront of our minds, even though we went through it. I remember waking up early to sign up for classes, freaking out to my advisor when I couldn't get right. We did this. We went through this. We went through finding ourselves as people and what college can do, the four-year institution, and even like a lot of the community college that feed into the bigger schools. There's so many wonderful things it does, and there's also a lot of problems that come up that our students are navigating for the first time. And I think being there for more than just our purpose, the Israel education, the Israel advocacy, the Israel engagement, is really what will make a difference in the lives of our students, but also in the overarching pro-Israel community. You know, when I don't unfortunately get to work with undergrads as much as I used to when I was newly an AEPi staff member, but you know, there were guys that would call me up to ask advice for things that had nothing to do with the fraternity. And that's the type of relationship we need to have with our constituents. And whether that's a professor, whether that's a parent, whether that's a pro-Israel professional like us, like, they're people. And far too often we see a number, we see, you know, okay, there's a BDS referendum, we see an ally, we see, you know, something like that, which they are, but they are so much more. And when we focus on that more, we get, you know, they were already great, all of our students, but the amount of work, the type of work, the effort, I mean, there's tons of studies about this, about building relationships and how do you motivate your peers, and when you treat them like peers and not like a subordinate. Like, there's just so much out there that we need to be doing, and we definitely are as a community focusing a lot on this. And everywhere I go to speak, whenever I talk recruitment, whether it's with pro-Israel staff or their fellows, I always talk about this. We have to remember we're dealing with people. And people are people, no matter where they are or what their backgrounds are. They're still people, and they have things going on that we don't know about. And right now, the BDS referendum that's coming to campus in 2 weeks might not be on the top of their priority list, and we need to be okay with that. And if we can help navigate their priority list to get to the point where now we can accomplish our goals, it's inspirational to see what these undergrads and students and just leaders in general, you know, just they're leaders and what they do, and then they take what we do and they pass it on to their it's incredible. And you know, that's always been a big focus of mine in any conference I've been to and any conversation I've had. I always want to focus on the people.
You really hit the nail on the head. I think as pros or professionals, Jewish professionals, we forget that our students are not just Jewish or just Zionists. They're also many other different things.
Yes.
So if we can only be there for them as Jews and Zionists, then we're leaving it to other communities, other individuals who might not have the purest intentions to help fill those gaps. And it's important for us to, you know, be as much of a united community as possible and bring value to their lives in as many ways as possible.
exactly.
we have a lot of questions from people in the crowd. I got one question. I'm going to go with touching on your explanation about AEPi's involvement in high school programming. David Markle is asking if on AEPi's website you have any resources that that you can use to educate high school students about Jewish life on campus, Israel, Jewish life in general.
So we don't online, and after this call, maybe we will now. But we have a lot of material, and what we do is we really promote the community as a whole. AEPi, when we go into the high school world, you can ask anyone who's had an AEPi staff member visit a synagogue, a convention. Our message is not AEPi, our message is the whole community. And so while we currently don't have resources online, I know there's plenty of organizations out there that do. Reaching out to local Hillels is a great resource because every campus is so different. It's so hard to say overarching, here's what it's like. You have your statistics, but when you get to campus, it's different, right? So simple things like in February in California, you can still do things outside, where on the East Coast you can't. And that affects the Jewish and pro-Israel life and what's happening in that, right? There's so many nuances to campus life that you can't just overarch it. So what I'd say is if there's a specific question, reach out to one of the local organizations there, or again, AEPi, we have a high school program. I know Stand With Us has an incredible high school program. I know JNF works with high schoolers through Alexander Muss and helps educate them that way. And their local staff have the pulse on the ground. But if honestly, it's campus by campus, so it's hard to just have one resource. But just know wherever you go, there is someone that can help. And whether it's, AEPi, we can't be everywhere. We're a Jewish fraternity. So there are campuses that can't support us as a fraternity. There are campuses that can't support a Jewish fraternity via the numbers. So we aren't everywhere, but as a coalition of organizations, we're everywhere. And if we're not there, we will be if we find out about it as a community. So sorry that we currently don't have these online resources. But again, we would love to promote the partner organizations out there that do. And I have contacts everywhere. I know Joel has contacts everywhere. And if you know one person in our community, it's very easy to get to know everybody.
Thank you for that. And you touched on the idea at the end of that, that AEPi can't be everywhere at once. The AEPi doesn't have a chapter everywhere. And Scott Schaefer actually asked a question on how to create support systems where fraternities and sororities don't exist. And I think I can answer this myself. If you're at a campus that doesn't have a support system supported by AEPi, you can go to two places generally. And if they don't have a presence there, they can always point you into or show you how to create a presence there. The two are Hillel International through their local Hillels on one end. And then if you're looking for more pro-Israel community support, Israel on Campus Coalition. We've mentioned them several times in this call, but Israel on Campus Coalition is really the driving force between uniting all the pro-Israel and Jewish organizations that work on campus. You can find them at israelcc.org, and they will be a resource to you to help build these support systems if they don't exist at a campus you're thinking of maybe sending your child to, or your friends are thinking of sending their child to. And AEPi is a part of that coalition. ACF is part of that coalition. Stand With Us. Anyone that you can imagine that works on campus. So please use them as a resource.
And what I'll also say as far as the support system, that's professionally, and you'll be amazed at when one person stands up and says, I really want to start something, people come out of the woodwork. A quick example is our Appalachian State chapter in Boone, North Carolina. I would be lying to you if I told you that was on a list. We knew where we wanted to go. But actually we had an undergrad who I met while he was in high school. He was there and he wanted to transfer because there was no Jewish community. And his mom was like, no, you chose this school. You're going to stick it out. Start your own. And there is not a Hillel on campus. Now there's an overarching Hillel that does help with that chapter. But when you look at what's happened since he started it, our group has grown over 20 members, maybe even up to 30. I haven't looked recently. But not just the amount of people that they have found that want to be involved in Jewish life, but what they're doing. There was a swastika found on campus, and the AEPi guys led the organization of what they called 2 Days Against Hate. With the help of Simon Wiesenthal Center, they got a former anti-Semite who's been reformed to talk about that. And then what's really incredible is they did a multicultural organizational fair. And it was the first time that the school's director of inclusion met, or director of diversity, I don't know the exact title, I think it's diversity, met the multicultural organizations. And all of that happened because one guy didn't have that support system. So he created his own, and while creating his own, found out how many people really did want and need that support system on that campus. So I don't know if you're a student or you're a parent of a future student, I do want to encourage you to make it your own, because you have no idea what could really come of that. And there's so many, we're at Southern Methodist University. You would never expect a Jewish fraternity there. There's just so many different things out there. And once one person speaks up, you will see how many other people wish they had spoken up before and are happy someone did.
And real quick, I think you have a good grasp on this. If you could just list off all the Jewish sororities that are doing similar work.
Yeah, so there's AEPi, there's Sigma AEPi, there's Sigma Delta Tau. Those are really the three that are still in the Jewish space. Now, I know there's other ones that have started Jewish and things like that, but when you're looking into the Jewish community, those are really the three. And again, depending on the campus out there, is really, you have to find your right fit. But on the national level, we partner a lot with AEPi on programs to show unity. And then we also work with Sigma AEPi on campus, and depending on the campus, an SDT chapter as well. And I know all of them have volunteers that work and focus on the Jewish aspects of their sororities and the Israel aspects of their sororities. And while sororities are a total different ballgame than fraternities, we have a lot more we can do in the fraternity world with less restrictions than the sorority world. So that's why it might not be as in your face as the fraternity system is. They're there, and they do want to help the young women going through their college lives. And I know if they're on your campus, you should 100% check them out, because that really could be the best fit for you.
And I would like to end it on two questions. The first one is to kind of give you a chance to give AEPi, shine the light on the good work AEPi is doing in this moment. As a leading Jewish voice on campus, how can AEPi be an ally in elevating the voices of Jews of color on campus?
Definitely. So I want to actually broaden this to not just Jews of color, but generally minorities on racial minorities specifically on campus, because that's definitely a hot button issue. So first, with the Jews of color, when people join AEPi, they are inherently more confident in their abilities to be a leader. The sole fact that you have a group of men behind you, supporting you, probably making fun of you along the way too, to add that tough skin, but they're there to support you and show up in times of need. That inherently makes anyone who joins AEPi more inclined to take a leadership position. And specifically in the Jewish of color space, when you are a Jew of color and you are in the chapter, and this is something you really want to take on, utilize the system we're a part of. We're a part of the Greek system, we're a part of the Jewish system, we're part of the Israel system. And we use our ability to promote and empower leaders. And we actually have a position in AEPi, our civic engagement chair, whose main purpose is to help find leadership roles for our brothers outside of AEPi. So we want to promote the type of leadership that we develop and share it to the entire community. So that includes Jews of color. And then more broad into the racial minorities, we're actually working right now on figuring out exactly what to do. We're listening is really at the place we are right now, as the majority of our membership are not racial minorities. I will be the first to admit I'm not the expert, but I know people who are, and I'm listening, and we are listening, and we are getting, I think next week is our first call. We have a committee of almost 20 brothers who are on our social responsibility committee to really tackle this issue. And what can we do on campus? How can we be an agent of change as leaders in the community? You know, how do we branch out to help racial minorities when, not just in times of need, but in general? You know, can we volunteer places? Can we have some chapters currently raising money for organizations like the NAACP and things like that. So there's a lot of things we can do, but I will be honest, as I always say, I'm a really bad liar, so I just don't do it. We don't know. We're figuring it out. We're listening. We're learning. We're empowering the undergrads to really take this, because a lot of our undergrads are extremely passionate about what's happening now. They're attending the rallies. They're posting on social media, and we want to make change. And our methodology is to go local. So we want to know what our guys want to do on campus in their communities and how we can support that to the best of our abilities. Because, you know, we don't want to be left. You're a light unto the nations, right? We want to be the agents of change to make equality a thing on campus. And the first step of that is listening. And that's what we're doing. We're listening right now.
And thank you for listening. My last question is, what is your advice for alumni who want to help fight anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism at their alma maters?
Yeah, so my advice for alumni is very similar to the organizations. First, as an alumni of an institution, we as alumni also need to check our egos at the door. We have our preconceived notion of what is right, what is wrong, what will work, what won't work. And I think as alumni, we need to understand that every single year, our campuses that we went to change. The buildings change, the institutions change, the teachers change, the administrators change, the paint changes, right? There's so much change that happens every year, to where if you go back a year later, you're like, wait, this is a different place. And that isn't just physically, that is the makeup of the campus. That's the students who are attending. So I'd say the first thing is listen, be a resource, but listen to the students and hear what they're going through, hear what they need. And then don't say, well, when I was an undergrad there, right? That's the number one thing that I think alumni possibly can do that will be counterproductive, because the first thing they will say to you is, well, you're not here right now. So we need to listen, we need to build those relationships with the students going through it, and then ask how to help. And they're going to be the ones to tell you, because every campus is different, every student has different needs, every organization has different needs, whether it's a fraternity, whether it's the Israel Club, whether it's the local Hillel or Chabad. And it's all very different in what they need, and just understand there isn't a cookie cutter answer. What works on one campus might not work on another, and what worked on one campus last year might not work on that campus this year. And so, like, I know that's something that I make a point to say, okay, this might not have worked before, maybe it will now. Well, what's the worst that could happen is we take a shot, it didn't work, and we're back to the drawing board. Luckily, when it comes to pro-Israel advocacy on campus, it's not brain surgery. Like, if you mess up, I don't think anyone's dying. So, like, let's see what's the best thing we can do. Let's listen to the students that are in the ground, because also, if we make decisions, we get to go home at night, right? We get to go home to our family, to our friends. We go off campus. It doesn't really affect us day to day. We're going to leave them with something, because they don't get to leave. They live there, they work there, they learn there. And so really the students need to be the driving force behind anything alumni do to help. So my advice to alumni is listen and go in with the thought that you might not have the perfect solution. Because if you had the perfect solution, then anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism wouldn't exist. And guess what? It's still here. So let's listen. Let's hear from the people going through it. Let's empower our students to really take the lead and be there as a support system, as a resource, and provide anything we can based off of the needs. And also, you can give suggestions, of course, but it's not, don't go in saying, here's what we're going to do and here's how we're going to do it. Go in saying, here's what I think could work. What do you think? Okay, let me hear your ideas. Or even better, let me hear your ideas. Now let me tell you what I think.
Well, thank you so much, John. Thank you for being on this webinar with us. Thank you for being committed to Jewish life on campus for a lifetime. And I look forward to having you join us in the future and a future partnership with AEPi.
Yes, thank you so much for setting this up. And if anyone has any other questions, please feel free to reach out to me. Joel has my email address, and I'd be happy to hop on a call or answer any questions that are more specific to a campus or a community, or whether it's high school or college or alumni. Luckily with AEPi, we have expertise in all of that now.
Awesome. Well, have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Bye now.